This week in news surrounding Israel, Chuck Schumer says Netanyahu has lost his way. Friends, that's a headline. Stay tuned for all the details. Well, shalom, everyone. Welcome once again to this week's newscast. I'm Robert Gottselig, your host. And last Thursday, March 14th, Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called for new elections in Israel. And he said that Benjamin Netanyahu has lost his way and that his coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th. Well, friends, have a look at what Senator Schumer said.
As a lifelong supporter of Israel, it has become clear to me the Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th. Prime Minister Netanyahu has lost his way by allowing his political survival to take the precedence over the best interests of Israel. Israel cannot survive if it becomes a pariah. People on all sides of this war are turning away from a two-state solution, including Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. As the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in our government and as a staunch defender of Israel, I rise today to say unequivocally, this is a grave mistake for Israel, for Palestinians, for the region, and for the world.
Unbelievable. And when President Joe Biden was asked about Schumer's remarks, he said, well, he made a good speech shared by many Americans. If you remember, Biden also said around 20 minutes after his State of the Union address on March 7th that, well, Netanyahu needs to come to a Jesus meeting. Friends, the U.S. administration needs to tread very carefully as they are trying to interfere in Israeli politics in the middle of a war. And they're really doing that to appease their progressive left base because elections are coming up here in November. And as they pressure Israel to end this war, friends, and accept a two-state solution with the people who wish them dead, well, I think they ought to tremble before the God of this universe, because God is clear that all those that burden themselves with Jerusalem will one day be cut in pieces. Of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu blasted Schumer for his comments, and this is what he said. He said it is inappropriate to go to a sister democracy and try to replace the elected leadership there. That is something that the Israeli public does on its own. We are not a banana republic. I think the only government that we should be working on to bring down now is the terrorist tyranny in Gaza, the Hamas tyranny that murdered over 1,000 Israelis, including dozens of Americans, and is holding Americans and Israelis hostage. That's what we should be focused on. Netanyahu went on to say, he said, this is a wake-up call to Senator Schumer. The majority of Israelis support the policies of our government. It is not a fringe government. If Senator Schumer opposes these policies, he's not opposing me. He's opposing the Israeli people. You know, friends, this constant pushing Israel into a corner to allow Hamas to live another day and really have a repeat of October 7th in the future and force Israel really to a two-state solution, and ram that down Israel's throat. Not only is all of that wrong, but friends, it's disgusting because the U.S. administration and really much of the world acts as if it's all Israel's fault that there's no peace and that Israel is the one who has been obstacles to Palestinian statehood. But friends, the truth of the matter is it's not to blame Israel for that. The blame lies solely on the Arab world and the so-called Palestinians, not with Israel. And so here's just a very brief history lesson. When the Ottoman Empire joined the side of Germany in World War I, they were defeated by the allies of France, United Kingdom, Russia, the United States, Italy, and Japan. And as a result, Britain and France divided up the Ottoman provinces, eventually giving Syria, Iraq, Lebanon their independence. And included in that was also to be a homeland for the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland, in which, by the way, there was always a constant Jewish presence in that land, in the land of Israel. At that time, it was called, in those days, it was called Palestine. But there was always a continual Jewish presence in Hebron, Safed, Tiberias, and Jerusalem. And friends, that was declared a homeland in the Balfour Declaration of 1917, which became international law in San Remo in 1920 when the League of Nations met. Friends, and though Britain had the mandate to see that happen, they did not. Instead, they carved up Palestine, giving about 82% of it away to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, leaving the remaining 18% for the Jewish people. Historian Martin Gilbert, this is what he writes in his book, The Routledge Atlas of the Middle East Conflict. He says this. He says, largely as a result of Britain's victories over the Turks in 1917 and 1918, more than 10 million Arabs, listen to this, were liberated from Turkish rule. The total area of Arab lands in Arabia was 1,184,000 square miles. Palestine, the only portion of former Turkish territory set aside for a Jewish national home, covered less than 11,000 square miles. And again, as I mentioned, then they took that and carved up 82% of it and gave it away to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, which was called Transjordan. So Jordan also got their independence. And then that remaining 18%, well, guess what? It got further divided up. And so there you go. So if you really insist in a Palestinian state for the so-called Palestinians, there you have it in Jordan, of which, by the way, most Palestinians hold Jordanian passports. But you see, it was never really about borders with the Arab world and the Palestinians, is it? And it's not today, because what's their mantra? It's from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That means no Israel. And that's why the Arab world and the Palestinians, friends, have rejected a two-state solution 4 times. I've said it many times here on this newscast. They rejected it in 1937 and in 1947. And they rejected it again in 2000 and in 2008 because they are not interested in borders. They want it all. Again, as their mantra is, from the river to the sea. That's from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. And again, where does Israel fit in there? Simply, it doesn't. So come on, Chuck and Joe and Justin Trudeau here in Canada and Emmanuel Macron in France and really the rest of the world, wake up and quit pressuring Israel to make a peace with people who wish them dead. Because one day you will all have to give an account before the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For this is what he says in Joel chapter 3, verse 2. He says, I'm going to gather, God says, all the nations one day and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them there on account of my people, the Jewish people, and my heritage, Israel. And here's the reason for the judgment, whom they've scattered among the nations. They have also divided up my land. Wow. And so, friends, let's continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Let's pray for Benjamin Netanyahu to stand strong against all his critics that come around him, trying to upset his government, trying to pressure Israel to a ceasefire and allow Hamas to live another day, all the while pushing them into this two-state solution with people who wish them dead. Let's pray for Israel's leaders to stand strong and to be wise. Let's pray for our own leaders in our own countries to get on board not only with God's program, but to really look at the geopolitical and understand that it's not Israel to blame. We shouldn't be pointing our fingers at Israel. It is with the Arab community, especially in 37 and 47, and the Palestinians. They're not interested in two states. Now we've got a lot of normalization that's going on with some Arab countries, and that's a good thing. But friends, the blame is not on Israel. Let's stand with Israel. Let's support Israel. Let's love on the Jewish people as this world is turning against them. If you want to know how to do that, you can simply visit our website at foicanada.org and get more informed. But friends, I just want to just reiterate the fact that Israel is there in the Middle East as this democratic country protecting the same freedoms and values that we so enjoy here in the West. So let's stand with them and let's support them. And so with that, and until next time, friends, thanks for joining us on another episode of In News Surrounding Israel. God bless.